Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. My guest today, Dr. Bruce Loisel from Community Human Services. And so welcome and tell me what you do.
Well, thanks for having me. I work for a 501c3 nonprofit organization, Community Human Services. We're a nonprofit that works primarily on the Monterey Peninsula and also in Salinas. We serve Monterey County. And what I do in particular is I run a methadone clinic that's located in Salinas. What Community Human Services does is it provides a large range of services, anywhere from residential treatment programs for persons suffering from addiction to homeless and runaway youth services. We also have a full counseling program for persons who are low income. It's called our Access Program. We provide low cost or free therapy by licensed and licensed eligible individuals. We also provide outpatient drug and alcohol services. So, and then we have a number of other smaller programs that do things like community education, parent education. We work with the schools in the area. We send in drug and alcohol counselors to the schools so that they can, so students who are struggling or have been, caught with some sort of substance can be referred to that individual, and so that hopefully we can move them towards, a more positive future, higher quality of life. So we do a whole bunch of things under the umbrella of Community Human Services. I'm fortunate enough to be the program officer at Community Human Services Off Main Clinic, which is a methadone clinic, like I said, located in Salinas, and we serve about 250 people at the clinic.
So, and you guys have been around, you're not new to the neighborhood. You've
Right.
been around for a while.
Yeah, over 50 years.
Yeah.
And, there's been a few name changes along the way, but generally speaking, we've evolved into, a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization that serves a significant amount of people in this area.
So I guess, just let's dive right into it. We're in the midst of a national opioid epidemic,
Yeah.
and our little region doesn't escape it.
No.
And let's talk about two things. Let's talk about this epidemic, and then let's talk about the mythology around methadone and how it works and what's not right that
Sure.
people get wrong.
Sure.
And I'll let you take that in any way you want to start.
Okay, well, as far as the national epidemic is concerned, fortunately, the federal government is going to be pouring money into treatment for persons suffering from opiate addiction, but it's a very complex problem. You're talking about pharmaceutical companies that are producing a significant amount of very powerful painkillers, and now, just recently, we've had the addition of opioids flooding into the country
From China.
Yeah. Primarily, and also other countries as well. And so we have this proliferation of opioids in our system now in the United States, and we have a significantly high number of people who are addicted to them. The opioid crisis has multiple. I don't know if the correct term is offenders, but there's a lot of things that go into. There's a lot of things that went into creating this crisis. The overprescription by certain physicians that aren't acting ethically, pill mills, and I know that's a huge problem in Florida and some other states. You've got high potency painkillers now, painkillers that are extremely addictive. That are, generally speaking, most painkillers are meant for post-operative conditions 2 to 3, 4 days out. Unfortunately, prescribers are not following that protocol or haven't been following that protocol, and persons are becoming addicted over long periods of time. High-powered painkillers, like I said, are just for short-term use rather than long-term use. And in our country, we've shifted over into long term use. People are using fentanyl now.
Yeah, I want to talk about fentanyl because
Yeah.
that seems really insidious.
Yeah, fentanyl is a drug that is basically was designed for persons who are in significant amounts of pain, and primarily for cancer treatment and other treatments that are long-term, chronic, and painful. Unfortunately, individuals are using fentanyl patches for the mood-altering effect. And so we've got a problem with fentanyl too, and also that's pouring in from China. And now they're taking the fentanyl and mixing it with other substances, and again, it's creating a huge problem. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And and let's now go to methadone treatment, because there's so much mythology about it. It's been
Right.
so kind of demonized, and it's I think in some people's minds, well, you're just giving people one drug for another drug and it doesn't solve anything. But that's not quite how it works. It's a very effective treatment.
Well, first of all, methadone's been around for a long time.
Yes.
I remember when I was a kid, the first thing I heard about methadone was that it was a government program designed to take heroin addicts and get them addicted to other drugs so that we could keep track of them. And so that's what I learned about methadone. That was my initiation to methadone. I've been at Off Main Clinic for almost 6 years now, and what I want to convey to people, it's very important to me that they understand that methadone is very misunderstood. There's a lot of mythology, a lot of things that people say about methadone that just aren't true, misconceptions, and not just misconceptions in the public. What I'm finding right now is that there's a ton of misconceptions among providers.
Interesting.
And so what I'm finding is that people that I'm referring to other agencies are telling people, you've got to get off this stuff. You've got to get off this stuff. But what people don't understand is methadone is not mood altering, and so it doesn't alter your mood. You don't feel high when you take methadone. There's two primary effects of methadone. One is that it staves off withdrawal symptoms, so you don't go through horrific withdrawals. And the second, that it reduces and or eliminates your craving for heroin or other opiates. It's important to kind of lay out the progression that occurs when somebody becomes addicted to opiates. And here's a typical progression. A person is at work, he or she hurts her back or his back. They seek treatment. They start them on Vicodin or a prescription painkiller. They become initially attracted to it and then addicted to it. And if the physician continues to prescribe, that physician may at some point say, hey, look, you've got to come off this stuff, and stops prescribing. Or that physician moves out of town, or that physician gets into some sort of trouble with the DEA for overprescribing, and then all of a sudden your supply stops. And now you're addicted to opiates, yet you don't have any. And so now you're starting to really go into withdrawal symptoms. So what do? You buy pills off the street. Well, pills are very expensive. Then people will switch to smoking heroin because it's significantly less expensive. But then as you smoke heroin, your tolerance reduces, and then you move into IV use. And that's how very normal people anywhere from Pebble Beach to Chinatown in Salinas. We have a whole range of people. Addiction doesn't discriminate, and so you can be extremely wealthy and still struggle with heroin addiction, and that's what happens over time. And so by the time they get to us, they're addicted to whatever opiate they're addicted to. We provide them with methadone. People forget that heroin is not pharmaceutical grade. And so you have no idea what you're putting into your veins.
Right.
And so there's a significant amount of bacterial infections. You get cysts. You get emergency room visits, which are extremely costly, many times for people who have no insurance or are underinsured. And it becomes this whole large problem. When you take methadone and you give a person methadone, it's prescription grade. There is no bacteria in it. It's closely monitored. And what's is equally important as all that is they also receive counseling when they come in. And so we're working in a medical capacity to reduce their craving and reduce any withdrawal symptoms they have. And we're also working with a social model in that we are helping them to make the most of their methadone use, which is they're able to go back to work, they can reconnect with their families, with their children, with their significant others, go to school. We have people, probably most of our patients are either working or in school. And so this idea that we're just treating people who are quote unquote derelict heroin addicts on the street, that's not the case.
So how now can you then get off of methadone? Is it a forever thing, or can that be tapered down?
We operate off of a patient-centered approach, which means that we have to honor and respect what the patient wants to do. If the patient chooses to continue on methadone for a longer period of time, we would support that. If they choose to titrate off and reduce their dose, we've had many patients who titrate all the way down to 0, and then they just don't come to the clinic anymore.
And you monitor that.
Yeah,
monitor
absolutely.
that so that it's.
We have a medical doctor who works at the clinic, as well as physician's assistants, LVNs, RNs, and all the medical treatment is provided.
And so, how do you get over the shame factor for people?
Right.
Because that's got to be a big part of this.
There is a stigma attached with methadone and heroin and opiates.
Yes.
What we do is we treat everybody with dignity and respect. I want everybody who comes into my clinic to have a positive experience, and so my staff works very hard at making people feel comfortable. We acknowledge that, with patients as they come in. By the time patients come into a methadone clinic, they're really ready for help. It's really is somewhat, for many people, the last house on the block, and at that point, they've set aside their pride generally, and have said, hey, I need some help with this. And we operate under very, very strict HIPAA regulations, and so we cannot provide information regarding a person's treatment to anybody. And so there is a level of anonymity that people can experience when they come in. We wouldn't share information with any other source.
So let's just, so we don't run out of time, let's make sure that just speak to someone who may have this issue. How do they find you? Where are you? And what do you kind of want to tell them is like, come, it's okay?
Usually people find us by word of mouth. They'll ask around. We do have a website, Community Human Services website, and we do get a lot of referrals from emergency rooms as well. Other providers will send us law enforcement. We also dose pregnant women in the jail system. And so if somebody is interested in getting help, we're located behind the bowling alley. Just give us a call. We have something called Walk-In Wednesday. The first 4 patients who come in Wednesday who are willing to commit that day to the process, and then the following day can actually get dosed the next day. So you can come in some fairly significant withdrawals, go through the process, which is it's a significant process because methadone is a Schedule II medication. So we screen, but we also move quickly so that people can get relief quickly. So we have, like I said, Walk-In Wednesdays where people can just come in and get immediate help.
And then I want to also say that you probably need money.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Who doesn't need money?
So let's just do a quick outreach here.
Sure.
Because this is it depends on the community to sponsor this, to deal with this, to pay for this.
Absolutely. We rely on a number of funding sources, and one of the funding sources that we rely heavily on is the local community. And so if people would like to make a donation to Community Human Services, you can do it on our website, which is, I need to get the website address. Sorry.
I'll put that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they can go on the website. They can make a donation on the website. If you want it to go specifically to methadone, you can, or off Main Clinic, the Methadone Treatment Center, or any of the other programs that we offer, you can just indicate online. So that's probably the best way to give.
Wow. So, and then just give us like a scale of what this scourge really is in the country. We read about it, and if it's not affecting you personally, it's hard to get your head around that this is happening.
Yeah, it's a terrible addiction to be addicted to opiates. And essentially, like any addiction, but in particular with opiates, it takes over an individual's life. It takes over their families. It takes over their relationships, their jobs, and it's very unfortunate that because of a confluence of events that have happened, we are now struggling with how do we provide these people with treatment and how do we move them from being opiate addicted, opiate dependent to non-addicted, non-dependent.
And then the other issue of this is when you have this going on a massive scale, it takes the rest of the community resources up. I mean, a lot of resources go. This is very costly for a community to have this going on.
Methadone and treatment. Any study that you read will indicate that methadone and treatment, whether it's residential or outpatient treatment, is significantly less costly to the community than
letting the problem
jail or incarceration, any or emergency room visits, etc. So treatment is significantly more cost effective, and unfortunately, what's happened is this epidemic has crept up on us, and all of a sudden it's here. But the community hasn't had an opportunity to really digest and understand all the issues that are going on with this. And again, the misunderstanding about methadone, misunderstanding about treatment, the costliness of incarcerating somebody rather than treatment.
Yeah, it needs to be decriminalized.
Decriminalized. And again, getting people into treatment, it helps everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, people need to know that you're not a criminal. You've got an issue.
Right.
It's a sickness.
Right. If you have a genetic predisposition to any type of substance, if you cross paths with that substance, you're probably going to become addicted.
Well, anyway, I appreciate you coming very much. We're talking to Dr. Bruce Loisel, Community Human Services, based in Salinas. And you're going to have to come back because this is just a deep subject, and a lot more is going to be needed to be spoken about on this.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
A pleasure.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Pleasure.